Well, thanks everyone. We'll get started. Super excited to introduce the.
That's his super excited face.
Yeah, it's for those that know me. I'm very emotional right now.
It's like Popcorn Man. It's like, this is my only face.
This is going to be a long panel if you're going to keep cutting in.
You paid money for this.
I did. We've got some super experienced people here today, some great stories, some great insight. I will let them introduce themselves and we'll get stuck into it. So, Alex, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Alexander Fernandez. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Streamline Media Group. We have studios in Colombia, in Malaysia, and offices in Japan and the United States. I started off 23 years ago when I was 20 years old with hair. I'm freezing, hence why I'm wearing a beanie right now. So, thank you for coming.
I'm Scott Walker, the CEO of Ninja Kiwi. Been in the business for about 30 years now. Half of that time in the U.S., sort of born American, Kiwi by choice. Half of that time in indie startup, but then managing large teams for EA and Activision, and then came to New Zealand to partner with Chris and Stephen Harris, the co-founders of Ninja Kiwi. So we've seen growth from 6 people to now 100 people. Key moment there was the acquisition of a partner. So we were working with somebody on mobile development, and we joined forces. And then over that 14-year period, as I say, we've grown to about 100 people, and with a recent acquisition of another small studio. So we'll add some details on those later.
Hi, I'm Robert Walsh. I'm the CEO of Chrome Studios and founder from 1998. Been in the industry a long time, like these gentlemen. I also started off pretty small. I started off with 5 people, grew it to just under 400, and then laid off about 380 of them. So have some pretty good stories about growing and other ways of doing things. The only other thing I'd like to say is, it's an amazing industry to be in. We've had our challenges over the last 25 years, and like to share what we have to, inform the audience.
Great, thanks. So we'll have a bit of a chat. We'll try to get through a few questions here. Hopefully, have some time for questions at the end. I guess to kick things off, maybe Rob or Scott, in terms of starting out a studio, people may be already partway on their journey, maybe have a title or two behind them, have a well-functioning smaller team. What are some of the reasons that might compel a team to grow? What are some of the signs actually that they might start seeing that they should be growing bigger than they currently are?
Ninja Kiwi's story was one of need, really. We were a Flash developer. Few people could do a lot of little games on short cycles. And then this mobile platform came along, and that had a different expertise. And as I say, Ninja Kiwi, at the time that we started working with Digital Goldfish, we were maybe 10 people by that point. And they had a capability in Brew and J2ME and in like tiny handsets. And so when the iPhone came around, they came to us as a license partner, and that created a relationship where we could work with somebody in an area where they had expertise and we didn't have the capacity. We simply couldn't do it. A couple of years down the road, then we did join forces. So it was really it was a combination of capability that we didn't have and capacity that we also didn't have, and those were 2 main drivers for that.
Yeah, I'd reinforce that. I mean, our series of growth over the years was mostly around need. I'd go and sign another project, need to find people to do it, and to your point, not just capacity, but technical expertise. We signed a project back in 2000 and we didn't have the technical expertise at the time, and that's how I met Mario. But I'll tamper that with, given the knowledge I have now, and this falls into what we're talking about, there's various ways to grow, and you don't necessarily need to just go and hire a ton of people to get stuff done. And I think that's in my journey now is finding better ways of that. And the problem you'll find when you grow is it's like something lands on your desk and all of a sudden you've got to solve this problem. And you solve it immediately versus thinking long-term or thinking of other solutions. So the takeaway for me from where I came from is like, take a step back, smell the coffee, and then what are my choices versus, I'm just going to go and hire 50 people, because that's not always the right solution.
So that's a good segue straight away into we'll get to outsourcing and co-development. But if you are looking to build that capability and capacity somewhat in-house, what are the pros and cons of hiring someone permanently into a role versus bringing somebody on board as a contractor?
Well, I mean, I think one of the biggest things you have to understand is that if you're going to basically start adding people to your team, you have to have really good management and leadership capabilities. I'll be very honest with you, making games, that's the easy part. The hard part is actually running a company and having people that understand how to communicate, how to lead, how to manage, how to get people up and done. The soft skills in this industry are so lacking. That's one of the biggest reasons why we keep collapsing. So when you start basically looking at growth and you think I'm going to hire a contractor or someone internally, what you're really trying to figure out is, do I have the internal capabilities to support another human being within the organization or not? And I know it's kind of boring, but that honestly is what guarantees success or not.
I'll add to that. We were fortunate enough to get some behind-the-scene tours at Weta the other day. And this has been, and we've lived this story. When you look at what we do in games, it's like you have a small team here, and you have a bigger team here, and you have another smaller team here. And we have a mentality problem in our industry where it's like, when I work with somebody, it's a job for life. And then when you look at what the visual effects and those other industries do, it's project to project. I'll finish up on Lord of the Rings and then I'll go and work on Spider-Man. But in the games industry, people don't think of like, I'll go and work for me today and then I'll go and work for Mario tomorrow on his first game. And we have a different mindset than what that other industry does. And solving the beginning and the end of projects is what kills us as in the growth curve, because it's really expensive and it's not easy to recover from.
Alex, you talked about management capability. How do you address kind of increasing both, not only the bandwidth to be able to kind of have the people in the infrastructure to manage as your team grows, but also you mentioned the soft skills. Is that something you need to hire in? How do you train people up?
Yes, that's a very good question. So I think a couple things. Just because I'm the best artist doesn't mean I should be an art director. Just because I'm the best programmer, I should be a lead programmer. I should have the best human skills, management skills. I understand when you first start off, and we started 3 guys in an apartment, so let me be very clear. We've been self-funded, bootstrapped the business for 23 years. We never took outside capital, so we burned our hands every which way, failing upwards and downwards, and then failing yet again, and then learning from that. Ultimately, what it came down to is understanding that culture was our responsibility. And culture starts by basically looking outside of yourselves into other industries, reading books. I know how quaint that can sound, but reading and basically learning and asking questions of others. That's ultimately how we were able to do that. And for us, we basically take culture building and effectively soft skill development very seriously. We spend time and we dedicate that as part of our weekly schedule, because ultimately, in the end of the day, again, the work will get done, but how we do the work is as important as what we do. And that how part really comes down to soft skills.
And I think there's a lot of that culture question that's part of it. Being able to take part in Ninja Kiwi's growth, having had experience on both small and large teams, was really informative for me. And that was a gift. If I'd tried to do that years earlier, I wouldn't have had those reference points. So yes, look to people with different experiences, get some advice and guidance. I think that's externally. Internally, it is about the culture that you want to create. And for Ninja Kiwi, that was small teams, came from that Flash world again, and we really loved that flexibility that comes with a few people wearing multiple hats, and that creates leadership moments within the code components, art components. There's all these modules that go into games, and effectively those people are already leading those creatively and from a communication basis. So those start that skill development, modeling then any of your executive or management leadership in the exact kind of things that you want to see people on your team doing, and sort of even over communicating or overemphasizing those elements that you want people to just develop muscle memory in, and then you finally get that happy moment where you see some of those things coming back in conversations, and it's like, okay, that one's pretty effective. So those moments of allowing people to not just boom, now I'm a producer, or now I'm a director. They are just tiny little steps all along the way, and that's, in our experience, the best way to do it.
I'll counter that a little bit. One of the fundamental problems our industry has is title. Yeah. You start off as a junior programmer, you then become a senior programmer. Oh, my goal is to become a lead programmer. The last person you want to be the lead programmer is the best coder you have on your team. But the way we structure ourselves is, here's my next level, here's my next level, here's my next level. And there's an education curve. We're fortunate enough now that, a large portion of my studio have all been together for so long that we don't even have titles anymore. So we just work together, and it's like we don't have any leads. We just have programmers. And that mentality, if you can't, to your point about those soft skills, if you can't educate that you don't need to be a lead programmer to have the title of being the best programmer on the team, then at some point that will become a pinch that you just can't get past. Because the last thing you want you to do is have your lead guy managing people versus writing code. Well, the same applies to art.
I think that really comes back down to the issue that you talked about earlier, which is, in the end of the day, we don't know how to have contractors. We don't know how to end projects when it's started. So in the end of the day, it's just almost like a land grab of, I need all this. And then you realize you can't sustain it. So then you're like, well, actually, I wish I could, but now I can't. And then 30,000 people lose their jobs.
And I'll just add to that. It is about potentially thinking about things differently. I think the title is a big part of it. Title, pay raise, what's my capability, where can I grow? It's like, again, we're in the gaming industry, run and created by a bunch of people who know everything there is about min-maxing. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to min-max my life. Of course I am. So we've got really smart people who are really into the gamification of everything. So, and again, this is just one of the places where I had the same instinct. So at Ninja Kiwi, we don't have titles, and we don't put credits in our game. Like, we build things as a team. We see things as a team. It's contrarian, but I also feel like so many of those things were just adopted from the film and television industry, and they're not necessarily good reference points. We're a very different industry, and so I think it's up to you. Again, that's going to be your studio culture. Some people will like it if you're in a really competitive urban environment. Wow, look, a lot of people are, I need my title or else I can't work here. So I don't know. We're more fortunate to be flexible in old New Zealand, and I'm really grateful for that.
Right. Switching gears a little bit, and just to get clarification, Alex, can I ask you to explain the difference between co-development and outsourcing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is okay. So, I mean, I've been doing both for 23 years, and so I think what it comes down to is basically this: is co-development is truly working together in partnership with people who are as good, if not better, than what you yourself and your studio can do. Outsourcing is very much about, I know exactly what I want. Here are my specifications. Please build to order, and I don't need you to think beyond what I've told you to do. Right. So one is basically, how can I help you? Would you like
lovingly that? Though, right?
The other one is, I'm hungry. Please cook for me. Okay, here you go. Here, I'm going to make an amazing dish for you. That's the difference. But the thing is, because the industry is the industry, we like to conflate them and mix them around, because the bid-maxing of the industry loves cheap. We love the race to the bottom. We love to dumpster dive for nickels. And then we treat people like slaves. And then this is where outsourcing gets a negative connotation, where co-development is for the elite, and then developer is for those that are. It's crap, just to be clear.
Do you have a practical example of where you've done some co-development and how that kind of worked versus
Yeah. So I mean, like, let's put it this way. Like, actually, that's a very good point. Let me see. Let me grab one here. We'll do Saints Row. Let's go way back. All of you should have known what Saints Row is. I mean, some of you were probably born when it was coming out, and others of you may have played it. But Saints Row was the, let's make GTA wannabe and let's go after it. So that one, we had to make 360 buildings of the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago exists, so you go to Chicago, take a bunch of pictures in sub-zero temperature, and then recreate Chicago. And it's on a per building level, so you know exactly what you're making because, well, it exists. Whereas something like Street Fighter V, that was a 7-year endeavor that then went to Street Fighter VI, and that was basically, yes, we know the characters and we know the environments, but we're having to do a new art style. We're having to basically make it work in a way that makes sense with Capcom, and we're working directly with the Japanese, so they're like, we don't want to tell you what to do. You need to understand what we want, which is very cool because you got to get into the mindset. That is the difference. And that's just one of respect. The other one is just of labor. I guess the thing is, we can look at it this way. Here's an easy way to understand. So in the U.S., we have a thing called day laborers. You go yourself to a Home Depot and you pull up and you say, hey, I need someone to help me make a bathroom. And there's like 60 guys willing to jump into the truck to go help you make a bathroom. Whereas those exact same people could probably design the entire house too. And you just call them architects, general contractors. It's the same skill set.
So if a studio is kind of getting to that point, then when they have opportunities or needing bandwidth beyond either their ability to build that capability internally or beyond their appetite to build that internally, how should studios go about finding the right co-development or outsourcing partner? Rob, you've been doing a little bit of outsourcing these days.
Don't you just turn up at conferences and get a PlayStation 1 license and then say, sit at the front of the room and I can do this for you?
Yeah, well, that worked. That worked one time.
That's a long story from many years ago. But I think to that point is, and Alex brought this up before, it's you have to find cultural fit. Cultural fit, and that's where we worked well together years ago. They had a skill set that we didn't have internally. I signed a project to deliver a property that Mario helped me with, and we did a lot of work in Australia, and he did their portion of it here, and there was a cultural fit between us. And no disrespect to the outsourcing people in the room, we've really struggled over a very long period of time to find that same cultural fit with various territories around the world, because they don't get us for what we are. And you said this easily before, it's like, all right, I'm just an artist sitting somewhere with a tablet in front of me and I'm producing a piece of art without really understanding what's the story behind it, what's the end goal of doing this. It's like, I'm just building a tree. And if you can't bridge the gap between I'm just building a tree and, hey, I'm building, Tales from the Shire, the bigger picture of just building a tree, then that's where I think you get into trouble between the two, because the people who get what you're trying to do versus the people who are just producing a tree, they'll end up producing the tree 3 times. And that's where outsourcing kind of becomes difficult.
I guess then, though, for somebody that may have developed a great game, they may have had some success on Steam, they now want to bring that game to console, 3 or 4 different consoles. They don't have that capability, and there's 100 different outsourcing porting places. How do you test cultural fit? Is that something you can do over email, or on a Zoom call? Do you have to get there, shake a person's hand? Do you have to visit their studio? Like, how far do you have to go to work out whether that team is the right fit?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm 100% believer in you meet these people. I don't believe in the power of teleconferencing for anything like this. I mean, if we're talking about culture, you're talking about people. There's something to be said about having a cup of coffee, having a beer, having food, to understand whether or not you get each other. And ultimately, the best relationships we've had have always been in person, long amounts of time. It's like a date, like a really good date. It's like the date where you're like, wow, I hope they call again. or it's a horrible date and you're like, thank God that you lose my number. Because the thing is, like, you don't want to see them again. The thing is like, you have to have that personal connection, because in the end of the day, when you go into the trenches of development, which is really, I think, one of the reasons why you haven't had that relationship, a good experience with it, is in the trenches is when everything goes wrong. The project fails, things are on the line, people are freaking out. If you don't have that personal relationship, there's a good chance you don't even see them as human, which is the problem. Because ultimately, in the end of the day, you didn't even have that opportunity to meet them, and they didn't have the opportunity to meet you. So if you want this to work properly, you invest the time, you put the money behind that, go see them, they come see you, and you make sure you culturally understand each other, but you also just have great communication, and you actually enjoy each other's company. I would really emphasize the I enjoy your company part. Besides that, I hope you know how to do the work, because that should have already qualified there. Because then you're going to be with these people for a long time, if it works, right? And that's really the goal. They should continue long after the first or the second deliverable.
I think the caveat there is that it's something of scale and resource as well. If you're a small studio, you can't necessarily go visit South America or somewhere else in the world and spend thousands of dollars on a maybe. So then you do have to rely. You have to rely on your instinct. You have to do the teleconferences. You have to have the phone calls. You have to really work together in as many concrete ways as possible. You know, while you do tests and you run through things. So you do trial runs before you sign a bigger project, or you give them a first milestone before you sign the whole contract, depending on what it is. If you're doing a whole port, you can't really do that in slices. But there are ways to validate competency and fit. You know, our example with Digital Goldfish is that we didn't meet them in person for 3 years, but they were in Dundee, Scotland. So literally the furthest, place that you can get away from New Zealand. And neither of us had the capability to go meet each other. But what we did have was a really strong creative cadence, and so they were able to turn builds, and we could look at them the next day, and so we used that 12-hour time difference to our benefit, and that developed a working relationship that we were both really comfortable with, and so that's how we could do that for 3 years, and then that meeting was really it's our fun story, because they thought that we were going to take the balloons license away from them, and we were actually saying, no, we want to work with you guys for a lot longer, and
So you put the effort into it. I mean, 12 hours days. I mean, there you go. Yeah. So you were doing it.
Yeah, you have the phone calls at miserable times. Yes, you have to adjust your life to make it work.
There you go.
I guess the only other thing I'd add is, if you are fortunate enough to be in the position that you do have a hit on whatever platform it is, sadly, in one way, it's still business, and part of business is risk mitigation. So if you're looking for a porting house or a partner and you're doing a first-person shooter, don't come to me and ask for support when I'm doing character action platform games. So you've got to find people who work in the same lane. And this kind of goes back to what I said before about cultural fit. People who make first-person shooters, awesome, and that's what they do. So you need like-minded people who understand what you're trying to achieve. And I was at a recent conference, and this whole process, whether it's outsourcing, co-dev, you are both on a journey, and you both need to be on the same path on that journey. If you're not, it's going to end up in failure. So that's your point about getting to know them before you want to go on the second and the third and the fifth date. Yeah. You need to get there before you then sign up for 2 years of being in the trenches together.
Yeah.
I guess even if you can find that cultural fit at the right price with the right kind of vetted capability, things still go wrong, right? 100%. So what are some of the common challenges that you see in terms of that co-dev or that outsourcing relationship breaking down? What are some of the challenges there, and how does a studio go about setting up that relationship for success and making sure that some of these common challenges they can avoid or lessen the impact of?
Well, for us, I think, there's three major pieces. There's always one, the IT integration, which we do first off. We always integrate into the pipelines of our clients, SBN, Perforce, whatever it is. We make sure that from an IT security standpoint, we have that down pat. Second thing is the nomenclature between the studios, what they understand they do versus what we understand what they do, making sure that we harmonize on the nomenclature, that we actually have the cadence, the weekly or the daily updates, and ensuring that communication is at the level where both feel that you're getting enough. You want to know that these people are communicating as much as possible. And the last thing, really more than anything else, is when it hits the fan. And when it hits the fan, it's that ability to basically recover and have a real, let us have the real talk conversation about why it's wrong, what needs to change, how we're going to go about fixing that, and giving the space and the grace for that to happen in a time-sensitive environment, of course, because, it's never, we have years. It's like, no, we need it in a week or 3 hours from now. So I think it's important to set that pathways from day one.
Understanding what each group does well. I mean, again, I'm talking more in a partnership where so this would be more of an example of a porting or a development experience where there's a set expectation. Depends on how strong your vision document or your playable is or your reference product is, but then you've got to go through each deliverable and really understand where the flaws are, where is there some spark that's missing, because it's not just about getting the work done, it's about having it be signature, have it be meaningful, have it be something special. And the places where it's missing, that's where you have to have those real conversations and then identify key people who can fix that. Then how do we augment that piece? And often that's going to have to come from your team. Yeah. That's going to take more effort from you to help bridge that gulf. But then you have to be sure that somebody is meeting you on the other side.
I just want to add something. If you ever want to know how good your process is, bring in a third party. Seriously, it is like all the skeletons come out. Then you're like, we're brilliant. And then you're like, well, it's amazing. And I would always recommend you do it anyway, because that's how you really figure out how good it really is or not. No. Would you like to talk about processes? No.
I know exactly.
Scott, Alex, you've both expanded overseas for presumably different reasons. What are some strategic reasons why a studio might consider in an expansion to actually expand into international markets?
Probably more intentional. Robert, go for it.
And you got as far as New Zealand. This is your country, guys.
I mean, you were talking before, Scott, about there's some accidental benefit that you found in terms of that 24-hour cycle. So
that's the thing. So for us, it wasn't we didn't pick a studio in Scotland to partner with, but they were the best partner at the time and the most interested. So that was there was a spark there, and there's a difference between. Because again, we just worked with them for 3 years. We set it up as a partnership, as a full revenue share, and so that was a test of basically of how well we would partner. And there were multiple reasons to combine forces and actually to acquire them and become one company. The benefits have been the ability to have that round the clock, but that's strictly time zone based. What will happen anywhere though is a different perspective. So, and I really like the fact that that changing countries, or in a big country like, I don't know, the U.S. or Russia or something. I mean, it can be regional. That's enough of a difference for people to see things fundamentally different, be raised and consume entertainment and enjoy entertainment in fundamentally different ways. And that's a great checkpoint to have somebody who is just as passionate as you are about it, and who understands the game, the property, the nuances of level design as well as you do, but approach it in a different way, because that means that you've got a creative crucible to settle what usually is a combined approach.
For us, it was talent. Very straightforward. I mean, I think in the end of the day, we have a working thesis at the company that the next 3.5 billion people are coming from the global south, so Latin America, Southeast Asia, Africa, MENA. So for us, it was just basically wanting to make sure that we were involved in the places where there were young people wanting to make games. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, I always tell my team, it's like we go where the babies are born, where they're still having kids, where those kids want to be part of something exciting. And so when we ended up in Malaysia, it was a great time, 2010. The industry was just barely moving. Ended up in Colombia a couple of years ago, and same thing. So what we've been able to be a part of is this fast-paced changing life where you're seeing effectively social economic change through job mobility, through the creation of an industry that actually allows people to join with relatively low to no skills, which I think is amazing, because I'm self-taught. I taught myself how to be in this industry, so did my partners. So we know you can teach yourself. And if you can do that and you have the hunger, then we can put that into the way we are as a business, and we can grow quite fast. So that is effectively why we were doing this. And the other side on this is just that, we're a company. We like money and we like to create jobs. And if you put those two things together in this industry, it works. But we have a very different business model than a lot of people. So I think that's one of the major points where we're rewarded for growth. So it's something that we do.
I was just going to add, and it's a bit of a tangent, and it circles back to process. So through our history, most of our projects have been with US publishers. And that, to your point, we would send a build off at night. They would QA it all night. We'd wake up in the morning and we'd have the bug list from the day before. So when you're thinking about various elements of what your project takes, think of that in that process of you want some QA guys locally, but you want people to be doing the jobs that you don't need done while you're asleep, or what you need done while you're asleep versus because otherwise you end up you butt heads at some point. So, for us, that was, I remember back in the day, 2001, doing Thai, literally we'd get up and it was here's $50 today. We'd go and smash the bugs. And then the next day it's okay, half of them all been validated. So that full 24-hour work cycle, don't underestimate how valuable it actually is, no matter what the task is.
I guess there's sort of a big commitment in terms of taking that step to go international, though. When might a studio not be ready?
When you can't even communicate internally and be on the same page. So I want to be very clear about this. If you guys can't even be on the same page and you're sitting right next to each other, please never bring in a third party, let alone one that's halfway around the world and that's on your payroll. I really want to just stress this. It's just communication is so important, and the misunderstandings that can happen and the delays that happen from time zone only multiply and really intensify loss-making activities. So if you ever want to see a bunch of money lit on fire and hope that it actually doubles, make a game, and then make a game with two studios that are not next to each other with an efficient communication.
Plan for the amount of time that it takes to properly work with that partner. One of the clearest things that people generally do is say, well, we could produce this much art in X amount of time, so therefore we'll give it to somebody else, and that'll just be that math will just work. No, there's about 30%, maybe 50% of that time that's in that at least you need to start the process with, to be able to give that direction, make it really clear, do paint overs, do all the kinds of things that you have to do do in order to make sure that you're on track. And that might take, a significant percentage of your allocated time for that to be delivered until you get that right. And then it goes really fast. So if you've done that well, so you can, that's all you're planning. You need to allow for that time to hit stride, and then and set the planning up so that then you can capitalize once you've got the process in place. Like, that's when you scale. That's when you add more assets to it. Once it's proven, don't try to throw too much too fast. You burn a whole bunch of time at the beginning, and that's not a good way to plan it.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think there's three real components. You need a clear visionary. There is one person who knows what it is. Then I think you could underline the word communication 50 to 100 times, and we'll say that again today. And the last piece of the puzzle is, and for all the producers who are in the room, you need a strong producer, especially if you're doing cross-culture, cross-time zones, the amount of stuff that they have to organize, shuffle, align. If you don't have that, you will fail. It's just not possible without somebody who has strong leadership skills on a production side. I can't, enforce that one view enough.
I actually want to bring out the highlighter and circle it yellow and then put the red line and then cut my blood on it and put it there, because the producer is everything on this one. The administration, and I know, admin, but it's admin. A tremendous amount of administration. You need to be organized. And this is, again, go back to the earlier statement, bringing a third party to find out how organized and how well you do something. You're going to find out. And that producer, may they be protected forever, because if they do it right, they're worth everything, because ultimately that's really where it's going to break.
And read producer there for whoever it is that has that management. Ideally, it's somebody that combines a creative insight with the operational excellence. That's magic. So if that comes from your art team, let them. Yeah, again, they are producing it. So that is the function. It doesn't have to be a named producer in your organization, especially if you're a small shop, because you probably don't have the capability of hiring a dedicated producer.
Well, and have language proficiency in the language you're working with, even better. So let's start there.
So one more question before we open it up to the crowd. What lessons have you learned from your most challenging experience in studio growth? Mr. Walsh?
This is the cruel part of the talk. When things aren't going right, cut deep, cut early, get rid of people. I made that mistake of not doing it, and I paid a pretty dear price for it. So as much as this is a fun industry and we have a lot of fun and we do cool shit, it is also a business, and you need to know what the business model looks like. And sometimes you just can't let emotion get in the way of it, and that's the sour part for the day.
Yeah, and I guess for us it's the other for Ninja Kiwi, it was a commitment to stay small, and to only scale when we were ready for it. So for that 100 people, we've got 6 active projects. We define ourselves in a certain space where, and of course it's sort of a Kiwi. I mean, it's definitely a Kiwi thing, and it's pretty heavily a Scottish thing as well, where we just it's the punch above your weight. Do more with less, and that's not to put the burden on the team, but I think the learning is to not mistake your ability to do more with more people, so that when we combined forces with Digital Goldfish and they became part of Ninja Kiwi, not mistaking our ability to get more done with the fact that on an individual basis we could do more. Because we were doing more as a company, but it wasn't because any one could just suddenly do more work. So that it's tricky to analyze that. Your ambition grows. You see a game doing well. Wow, you want to do more. Geez, this is really connecting with the community. People are loving it. We're making money. This is working. This is working. It's so tempting to then just add to it. You have to be really brutal about how much your team can get done, and be happy with that. Don't try to stretch too far. That's the worst thing that you can do, and just assume that because things are going well, they're going to keep going well as you add 20% more to the scope of that next milestone. That is not sustainable.
I would say that basically hopium is a hell of a drug. Don't do it. And I think and the other side is basically if you play long enough, you live long enough, the pattern repeats itself. So make sure you remember it when you saw it the first time so you can apply it the second time. And just give yourself the grace that no matter how great you are and how smart you are and how strategic you are going to eat shit. And it's going to happen. You just have to understand to wash your mouth out and do it again, because that's just how it is. Welcome to video games. The end.
So, on that happy note, do we have any questions for our panelists?
On that optimistic note.
I mean, I think it's hope.
We're just old and grumpy and cynical up here.
Hey, but on a positive note,
It's actually fun.
We're still here.
We're still here. I mean, you just,
Hi.
hear it straight.
What a lovely quote. Definitely going to hold on to that. So the question I was going to ask is, might be specific. So I run a studio and we're looking at bidding on a larger project with a potential partner studio in Australia. And up to this point, we have always just figured out how it would work for us. But I have actually never done a co-bid on anything. So how would you expect something like this to go, for example, financially? Like how do you bid for something like it, price-wise, all that kind of stuff? Because I have no idea. I would love to learn.
happy to talk to you afterwards if you want, being an Aussie. Look, I think, again, if you go back to the C of communication, the other thing you add to that is expectation. And then I guess the third part of it is, validate those expectations. So regardless of the details, and let's look at it in simplistic terms. Let's say you're a coding house, they're an art house. Make sure you know what all your responsibilities are. And we talked about this at dinner last night. Also make sure that your value and belief system aligns with theirs, because you guys have to row the boat in the same direction when you're partnering. It's almost like being married.
100%.
And set that up first, and if you do that, then it will problem solve easier down track. But I can give you specifics later if you want. But
Would love that.
Solve the 5,000 foot first, and then you can get down on the weeds second.
Have the uncomfortable conversation of it doesn't work. What are we going to do? Like, you just need to have the scenario in your head, and you real talk, sit down at the table being like, yeah, we're happy. Now we're not happy. How does this end in a way we don't mutually destroy each other? And have that clearly detailed with each other and then in the agreement. You need to make sure it's clear.
Yeah, just going to the other thing. It's also dependent who's on the hook if shit goes wrong.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, or both.
So there's always a clear. Oh, sorry. Just a real quick follow-up. So there's always should be a clear. They are the primary responsible.
Or you both are just on the line. You just, hang both your necks out and say, well, one swipe. I mean, the thing is, it's real. It's truly about, you should never be shy about it. It's like, because it can go right and it can also go wrong. We both know that. And as long as we're open about that and we're honest about it, and we know that, we die together, we ride together, let's rhyme it. Here you go. It's okay.
But contracts are also there's so many templates, but
yeah.
You get to make them.
100%.
Every contract is bespoke, so you can create. And so what I'd say is, you can make a lot of assumptions assumptions and you put together in your contract. But the main thing you need to do is start frickin' working together.
100%.
You just need to get some things under your, like, so make your first milestone small and quite rapid, with iteration cycles without too much money on the line, so that if stuff goes bad, nobody's really exposed. Get to work. And have your contract support that process so that you can, again, learn fast, fail fast, and then get into the real spirit of working together.
And a piece of advice my first lawyer in the industry gave me is, and this comes back to the contract and working together, if you ever need to pull the contract out of the cabinet, it's already too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a good way of having the difficult conversations that you talked about.
Sweet. Thank you very much.
Okay, more questions. Somebody's got something. Come on.
Too much vulgarity in this conversation.
And we've talked a lot about big stuff, but I imagine a lot of people are small developers, and we're not talking about big outsourcing. It might just be, I need one person, or I need this so ask questions about that as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm from Colombia. I wanted to hear Alex's experience with the studio in Colombia and in South America in general. How has it going for you? ¿Cómo te ha ido?
Está bien. I mean, it's been good. I mean, I think the thing is like this, like, I'm a very optimistic person, even though it doesn't seem like it. I'm actually quite positive, but I'm realistic about things. I think that the talent in Latin America, I don't want to generalize, but I would say like this, like, let's say Colombia, for instance. Colombia and Malaysia are so similar to each other. Colombia is about 10 years back where Malaysia was when we started. So that's the thing. So we already see that we're tracking it in the same direction. But then if you expand outwards to all of South America and parts of Central, you're starting to see a really nice story emerge of really talented people, super creative, also very technical, and getting the benefit of the fact that their northern neighbors are pushing a lot of stuff down that way. So I think that this is something where the overall growth trajectory for LATAM, it's going to be rapid development. And I think that basically what took Southeast Asia realistically 20 years, I think it could be done 7 to 10. It's quite fast.
The other thing I'd like to add, and this is kudos to Mario, you need infrastructure outside of our industry in the countries that you wish to go to. And if Mario's willing, he did a really great talk at Reboot. Was it Reboot?
Yes.
Yeah. About, all right, the path that they went through Colombia. It's like, so you need educational institutions that are supporting your body. You need government that are going to support. So if you're in those countries have to grow, but to grow, they need things outside of what we do. And if those elements aren't present, then it will be very difficult for them to create a bigger funnel for users. So be very cognizant of the infrastructure that supports the industry in the territories that you're looking to actually potentially, collaborate, outsource to, etc.
Yeah, our lawyer actually opened an office in Colombia a year before we made that move, so that was handy too. How are we going? Any more questions? We're almost out of time, I think. Come on. Here we go. Thank you. We're filming, I guess.
Sure, I got a weird one. We've done a fair bit of co-development before as well on our past games. And have any of you guys been in the situation of it goes too well and that puts huge pressures on the co-development in terms of changing what the different parties have to deliver because now it's a big success and then it falls apart?
I think the thing is like this. I mean, co-development is not getting married. It can be, if that's what you want. But I mean, remember, in the end of the day, I mean, the beautiful thing about this industry is we're only as good as the last project, which is just the unfortunate reality. So I think that in the end, you design success, but you also still have the right to decide whether you want to continue or not. So I think that ultimately, in the end of the day, in the areas where we've had really astonishing success, we're like, we don't want this to end, we'll be very clear about that. But in the places where the other party's like, you're the best I ever had, and we're like, well, you're okay, we'll politely maneuver just because we need to go into somewhere else. And that's just also a matter of subject fatigue, or we want to rotate the team onto something else. Again, communication, be kind, this is the breaking up part. And it's not easy, but do it nicely.
I think you can be friends with your ex, though.
Yeah,
like
you can. Yeah.
we work together. We work together a lot. And
Oh,
this is
really?
the thing.
Yeah, it's true, it's true.
We went
You can.
down different paths.
Oh,
and,
yeah. You're such a gentleman.
I could take that so many ways. I think back to what we were saying before. If you set expectations early, and if those expectations on both parties align with both your values and belief system, then if there does become a split up, it will be substantially easier. So it's, are we on the same page? I know that's a really simple thing to say, but it really comes down to it with in most things in life. Remove that blockage, and then the rest of the stuff will kind of sort itself out.
I'd also say your question was about asking how it goes wrong after that, but why does that need to be the end of the question? Why can't it be, how does it keep getting better? How do we continue to align ourselves? How do we continue to, this is a great partner. How do we work together, or again, like the Ninja Kiwi story, just figure out a way to permanently keep working together. If that's there are a whole bunch of options, teams, sub-teams, business alignments, getting more co-productions, or acquisition and merger. Those are great ways to keep working with a great partner. And you don't find them that often. So you should really jump on it. Might be great.
I think it's also that it's the pulse check. This is not something that after 2 years we finally ask each other how we feel. You're asking every month. And this is the thing. That's why it's never a surprise, right? Because you can it's like that. There's this, again, communication. Hey, how's it going? What's going on? How do you feel? I don't know. So it's like that level of discourse and that level of just real talk, I know sometimes can make people uncomfortable, but when you do it frequently and you're doing it just as part of the relationship, it actually becomes quite liberating, because in the end of the day, everything's up for discussion and nothing's a surprise. So again, I would always just urge everyone who has these relationships, specifically in the business level, that you just be comfortable having those conversations, because it's only in your benefit and their benefit too.
It's very rarely somebody lobs a hand grenade into the bunker.
Yeah.
It's very few things happen that fast, to your point. If you keep talking, it's not going to be a surprise.
All right. Any more questions? Oh, there's one over there.
Thank you for the discussion. I'm Sasha from Maitona. I have a question. All of what was discussed today is about strategic decisions. So my question is whether you have any strategic sessions on a regular basis, how it's all defined and shaped, if possible. Maybe
In terms of, you mean with the other party, or just internally?
internally, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm as you can tell, I like to talk. So I bore my people. I bring them into my office every Friday. I have a What Did We Learn This Week session. And that What Did We Learn This Week is on any subject they want to talk about, but generally it's framed within the context of our overall strategy. And in that point, we have really crazy conversations that are just fun, because in the end, it's not just the executives, not just the directors, but it's, what I call delivery, which is all of the production and engineering and development team. I have the revenue team in there, and then I have operations, and then we just go at it. And it's fun, it's like, it's a way for us all to learn from each other. And then also always remember, well, what is the big picture? And then we align that in there, and we start, it's a little gossipy though sometimes, because we're like, people vent. Yeah, it is. It can be, because they vent. People start to vent. I got chips there for them to eat, and they got a little bit of drinks, and then it's like, it's quite non-alcoholic. Let me be clear. It's still 3 p.m. So it's quite nice though. But it's a nice environment for them to vent and feel a part of where we're going. I like it too.
So every Friday.
Every Friday. I do it every Friday because you know what? It's high pressure. It's a high pressure environment that we're in. So I need them to blow the steam off, or else hell comes through.
Amazing.
Actually, I was going to reinforce that, and I've fallen off the every Friday wagon a little bit, just because of, travel and stuff like that. But it gives, from a strategic alliance point of view, if it comes from the top and then people can, respond to that and ask questions, then again, you're communicating the strategic alliance and allows people. I know Mario and Chanel from Half Brick do this really well about sharing what's going on. The other thing too, a part of that strategic alliance is always play to your strengths, because sometimes you can get away from that when, things aren't going according to your strategy, but always keep mindful of what you're really good at. And, if you can be the best of what you can be, then you will find a place within whatever vertical that looks like.
Cool.
It's being proud of who you are and what you are. I think that is the most important thing, especially for teams. It's okay.
So we're out of time. So if you could please join me in thanking our delightful panelists today.